have a confession to make. Earlier this year, when I was really diving into reading romance novels, I was hunting for a troll romance. Yes, specifically trolls, because that's the nickname for my husband Jason, who you probably met in the last episode. And in that search, I stumbled into Ella Larson's Falling for the Hidden Folk series, starting with Adjusting Focus. What I found wasn't just the troll romance I was craving. I found something that speaks directly to what we explore here on Romancing the Threshold. Stories about those avalanche moments in life that both bury and reveal, that force us through doorways we didn't choose, but somehow needed. You know, this podcast is still finding its own legs, one conversation at a time. But what's becoming clearer with each episode is this. What if we approached change, not with white-knuckling it and in survival mode, but with the curiosity of lovers? What if we lingered in the in-between instead of rushing through it? What if we trusted that the liminal space, that valley between who we were and who we're becoming, is actually fertile ground? Ella's Hidden Folk series lives these questions. She's created this hidden valley in Norway, a valley where transformation isn't rushed, where the in-between becomes a place of discovery rather than something to escape. Her characters don't just survive the avalanche. They learn to romance the aftermath. They discover that sometimes catastrophe cracks us open to magic we couldn't see before. Each character faces that same threshold, the avalanche, but experiences it completely differently. Just as we do in life, we can go through the same event and have wildly different crossings. And at the heart of it all is this question. When love asks you to choose, when belonging requires you to be seen, what do you risk? What do you gain? And when the old world is literally buried in snow, how do you learn to love what's revealed? I knew I had to have Ella on the podcast, not just because I'm a fan of her work, but because she's writing what I believe we desperately need right now. Stories that honor the pause, the wrestling, the fertile uncertainty of transformation. Stories that show us how to be curious about who we are becoming, rather than gripping tight to who we were. So let's cross this threshold together. So today I'm really delighted to have a guest with me, and that's Ella Larson. She's the author of Falling for the Hidden Folk series, which I highly recommend. And one of the ways I actually did find your series earlier in the year was I was looking for a troll romance, because that's the nickname I have for my husband. And I was starting to read monster romances, and I was like, well, I see orcs, I see minotaurs, but where are the trolls? So that's doing a search. And by the magic of the algorithm, I found your first book of the series, Adjusting Focus. And once I read that, I was absolutely hooked. I went to the second, I went to the third, and then I'm like, I'm waiting for the next ones. And so it has been a real treat reading the series. I think you're at number 6 now that just came out. Yes. And what I have really appreciated about the books is that, to me, it felt like you were writing about a threshold, crossing a real magical threshold into the hidden valley, right? And it all starts with the avalanche, this catastrophe, as sort of like a threshold, a doorway into something mysterious. And it becomes this valley, the Heimly Valley becomes this in-between place of discovery and belonging and found family, acknowledgement of desire. So that's what really I see in reading the series, and I'm really excited to see where you're going to go with it. And we'll talk more about that. But that's what excited me. So when you said yes to the podcast, I was like, ooh, I'm having a little fangirl moment here. So how are you doing?
I'm blushing a little bit now. Thank you. I'm so glad you like the Hidden Folk series, and yeah, I'm amazed you get so much from it, and it's always interesting to hear what readers are actually thinking of what I was thinking. Yeah, I'll just write a spicy little sort of troll book, which is now, as you say, turned into six. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you for asking me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So I guess take us back to the beginning for you. How did the series begin for you? This can help the ones who read the series or the ones who might be like, "Ooh, a hidden valley." So tell me more. So how did it start?
Well, I guess it started with where we all start with reading. I'd been reading really big epic fantasies for a long time. And I was just getting tired of them. And my brain just, with family life and everything, I just couldn't sort of hack all the politics and everything that was going on. I couldn't take it. So I was like, I need something lighter. I need something more fun. And I stumbled across Finley Fenn, who writes the Orcsworn series. And that was right up my street because it combined the sort of epic worlds and the high fantasy that I like from the epic fantasy that I read with very, very spicy romance. I don't know if you've read those series.
I've read the first one, The Lady and the Orc. Yeah.
Yeah, so they are not for the newcomers, those
No.
those books. Yeah, they were my first ones. um, and let's just say I was inspired and I was like, yeah, this looks so much fun to write something like this. However, I was not quite brave enough to go as far as Finley Fenn has done with her spice levels. But so I was sat thinking, okay, I was getting into monster romance, checking out all the other things out there. And of course, there's so many things with like vampires, werewolves, all those things that have been done. And like you, I couldn't find trolls anywhere. And I was sat looking out my window going, well, hang on. I live in Norway, where part of their mythology, their folklore is troll, and are trolls. Even today, it's quite a big part of the folklore. So that was kind of how it came about, but it also goes a little bit further back. When I got married to my husband, who is Norwegian, our wedding, because again, I was like, oh, I love Norwegian nature. I love folklore. I love a bit of fantasy. So I wanted to get this bit of fantasy into our wedding. And we actually had all these little figurines. I don't know if they make them anymore, but they were really popular in the sort of 70s, 80s. They're called Niform or Niform. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it. I would say Niform trolls. If you just Google them, you'll see all these trolls with like bushy hair. I'm not talking the Danish ones with the bright pink or whatever. And I'm talking, and they have really long noses. They're quite ugly looking, but in a cute way. And this was all sort of coming together when I was reading Finley Fenn. And I was like, but what if we made them sexy? Mm-hmm. What if we made these little troll figurines hot? And that was kind of where the concept came from living in Norway, from wanting this little bit of folklore magic in the everyday. So, yeah.
I love this image that came right from your own experience just outside your door. And, of course, the inspiration from Finley's books. But I'm kind of going back a little further here. I'm thinking, what drew you to romance? Sort of monster romance. I mean, I know you had the background and the joy of reading epic fantasy, but that was getting a little tiring. So what was the spark for monster romance?
Oh, that is a very good question. And I'm not entirely sure I know the answer. I mean, we sort of joke that everyone of our generation, we grew up watching Beauty and the Beast and all these movies where the love interest, I mean, the Robin Hood from Disney, everybody loved him. and he's a
Hmm.
fox.
Yes.
So I don't really know. I think I just saw it and thought, oh, okay, that's different. So it's this sort of epic fantasy, but instead of like a Viking or something, the main male character is a troll. And okay, not a troll, an orc. And orcs are quite humanoid, so it wasn't a huge jump. Obviously, there are some monster romance which are well outside my comfort zone in terms of what types of monster they are. So it was just sort of okay, so an orc is kind of just like a really big dude with big sharp teeth and he's green. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was enough of that magic and otherness that sort of pulled me in. But yeah, I blame all the stuff we watched as kids, really.
I mean, I've thought about because why I like monsters, which really diving in now. The origin story to me was my favorite fairy tale is Beauty and the Beast. So already I've been kind of nursing that for many years. And sometimes when I see how all the orcs have exploded on the scene, I sometimes think, what is Tolkien thinking in his grave? You know, what we've done with orcs. But the trolls, I was really, really like looking, and I did find one other that I read that I didn't really care for, but then I came upon yours and I was like, oh, to me, the books that you wrote transported, there was both the world, but it was easier to understand the world because it's also our world. So there's a sense of, I'm thinking in our world, discovering something magical that's thus far been hidden. And I really appreciated how each book, at least in the beginning, it's each character reliving, telling the Avalanche story from their perspective. So then you're crossing that threshold again and again, you know, not just from the first book. So for me, I don't know, that was just transportive. And then it got me thinking, oh, Norway. So what I'm curious here is, you know, your husband is Norwegian, you live in Norway. I'm wondering if do you feel a connection between your own experience of moving to Norway, creating this new life, and then the characters in your book, you know, crossing that threshold into a different place?
Oh, that's a very good question. I mean, I've never really thought about it, but I guess so. Thinking back, when I met my husband, obviously, like we met online. I'd never been to Norway. I'd heard it as this place, you know, as everybody does, of Vikings and fjords, and you do hear about the trolls and stuff, but I didn't really know anything about it. And so, as we were dating and we were sort of doing the long distance relationship thing, yeah, the first few times I came to Norway, it was this magical place. I remember getting off the plane, and I was living in the UK at the time, which is a pretty green and lush land, but just to get off out of the airport and onto the motorway, even the motorway is just, you're driving through these big mountains, you're driving over sort of lakes and rivers, and it's so beautiful. And my husband was like, we've literally just left, we're still in the city. I'm like, but it's beautiful. And one time we went to a stavkirke, which is the old, very, very old types of church. You might have seen them. They look very sort of black, all made of wood. There's very few of them left now.
Those, yeah.
They're very old. And it was just, it's like, you drive there and it's just there. And you're like, how is this real? This is something from a movie or a storybook, but no, it's just sat there in the countryside. And it was just beautiful. And I guess it must have lent into the creation of the Hidden Folk series. Yes, I've never really thought of it.
It's a bit of my, you know, therapist background coming in and being curious. It's like, you know, what inspired you and how do you, in a way, I was wondering about your own lived experience. You know, the trolls made a presence in your wedding, you know, and then you move to the land where the trolls, the myths are still very much alive. And then the landscape itself, because I see the landscape in the books as very vital to the story, as if Norway and the valley is another character to me.
Yeah. I mean, there is the story as well, which I guess was somewhere in the back of my mind. But when obviously the going a bit dark here, but when the plague was going around Europe in the 15th century, 14th, I'm not very good with dates. There's this story about villages in the woods and people, they were just abandoned, or the people died there. And then they weren't discovered until like the 1960s or something. Wow. They were all still there. Obviously, the bones were still there. And it was kind of like the landscape can be so rural here and so wild that these places are almost impenetrable. And so somewhere in the back of my mind, that story was, this village was just forgotten about and hidden essentially until some hiker came and found it.
Wow, I never heard of that. That's really impressive.
I mean, this might not have been the 60s, but somewhere there's this story about a village that from the plague that just got completely forgotten about until very recently in our history. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it because even in reading the stories, I'm always constantly thinking, like, how hidden is it? How far is it? Because I know you created, if I'm correct, you created a place. It's not an actual place.
No, I guess in my head as well, it would be a bit more, it would be more towards the coast and more on the west side and further north than where I live, which is quite far south. So I guess it would be, because in, which book is it? Book 5, I do mention Geiranger Fjord, which is a very famous fjord. That's where all the cruise ships go and everything. So it's sort of in that area. But it is completely fictional, obviously. I didn't want to start annoying any of the local population.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Well, in sort of kicking off the series itself, and I'm thinking about the powerful image of the avalanche. And, that feels like pure disaster. But it ends up being the doorway. It cracks open. A doorway, not just for the characters, but it reveals something hidden, much like the Black Plague village, but way less dark than that. But what made you choose the image of the avalanche?
Well, that essentially came down to just story planning. I had the idea, okay, well, I've got these characters. How on earth are they going to meet a troll? And I was sat for ages thinking, how am I going to do this? And the only thing I could think of was something very climactic, very sort of striking, because the trolls could just have watched these humans, made sure they didn't come into their valley, and it would have been fine. But I just felt it needed something more to push them together. And maybe I do have a penchant for the darker side of things. But also, as you said, sometimes these sort of events like this, the avalanche, it uncovers something. You're breaking into a new world. And in order to do that, you do need some sort of chaos or some sort of destruction in order to discover these new things. If you think about archaeology, you have to break through the earth to find the treasures that are there. And so I guess part of it was just dramatic flair. And another part of it was, no, I need a good reason. I need something that would really bring this world to light. And obviously with the avalanche, and you see in the first 4 and 5 books, that does bring the human world right to their doorstep. It is a constant source of stress for the Heimly community, for the hidden folk. And I don't know how much more I could say because I don't want to give too many spoilers.
Yeah. You don't want to
But
give the spoilers, yeah.
no.
But you touch on something that, as you say, I'm thinking, the name of this podcast is Romancing the Threshold. So my idea here is we're constantly going through thresholds, some much more easy, others Avalanche style, something so enormous beyond us takes over. And I'm thinking, as you were talking about it, how the Avalanche both covers and reveals, right? It covers the cabin where they were and reveals another world that was thus far hidden. And when you touched on how the trolls, it was the constant kind of anxiety they had between watching, right on that boundary, the human world and their world, constantly protecting that threshold. But the Avalanche comes, and granted, it's for the plot, dramatics, but it carries, I feel, both the trolls and the humans. They have to cross this threshold together now of nothing will be the same.
Yeah, that's right. Because the trolls, obviously, their species they're on their last generation, basically. They need more humans, I will say male or female, because there are other hidden folk in the valley as well who are in a similar situation. So yeah, they could just watch these humans and let their species die out, or they, in this case, are forced to do something because they rescue these women. They're not just going to let them be obliterated by an avalanche, because it's difficult, because I would say no human would do that, but they're not human. And no person with a heart would do that. So they have to put themselves out there. They have to show themselves in order to do the right thing and protect these women. And in the first instance, they're not necessarily, although, well, they're having a nice look beforehand and going, oh yeah, that would be nice. But they're not necessarily going to, go and kidnap these women to save their race. So they're not doing it for sort of malicious intent. So yeah, you're right. It does thrust both the human and the hidden folk together, the Avalanche.
Yeah, right on that threshold that they watch them, because in the beginning they're just watching them, and then they both have to meet. Something creates that.
Yeah.
How do you see the Avalanche itself, both for the trolls and the women, the human characters? How do you see that influence in the way they step into change?
Well, they are pretty much forced to do something about it. And it is that fight or flight instinct in the very first instance. As we see with Jeppe, he makes the wrong decision. But it also, in high stress situations like that, you discover more about yourself. And maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, maybe it's something you never even thought you could do. And I think we see that with Lauren, because she's, she is this sassy, big-mouthed attorney, lawyer. But then in that moment, all she can do is scream. She shows the vulnerability that she's been hiding throughout, and that is all that comes through. And so for her, the avalanche it kind of pushes her into this place of, you need to let others help you, which is very uncomfortable for her. She doesn't like it. And that's the thing with these moments where you're forced to make a decision. You might not like what you see, but it might be exactly what you need. If that makes any sense.
No, it does, because I'm hearing and thinking about the other characters, but just hearing and thinking about people, just personal experiences. Experiences.
I said Lauren. I didn't mean Lauren. I meant Izzy.
Oh, Izzy, that's right.
Izzy. Yeah. I thought you looked a bit confused. No, Izzy, sorry. It's been a while since I wrote those ones.
Well, you all need to read the books to know. Just telling the audience. But I was thinking here about how, just my own personal experience, experiences that I've seen friends, family, and clients. When we go through these threshold moments, these crises, we discover things about ourselves that we don't know. And it's quite unsettling. And so I'm thinking about the whole series, at least the first 5, how each character goes through, showcases a different way to cross that threshold. Izzy, the power lawyer, mouthy, authority, all of a sudden she needs to accept. She needs to strip down to be able to accept help. The other characters deal with it differently. And so I think you showcase different ways to deal with transition through each of the books.
I mean, it was quite a challenge at one point, but partly coordinating all 4 books. But by the time I got to sort of book or 3, I was like, okay, I need this experience to be different. And that was I really had to look at their characters at that point, because I couldn't just write something that wouldn't be true to their character. And I think that was a very interesting thing for me to do, look at this same event and how it affected the people differently.
Yeah, in many ways, that's really what gripped me with the series. It was because when I got to the second book, I was like, oh, we're back at the Avalanche. And I thought, oh, how's this going to be different? So I really liked this. As if in reading the book, each book, I was crossing the threshold again and again and going there with them. Now, once they go, and a lot happens, not giving any spoilers, they go to the valley, the Heimly Valley, where the hidden folk are. And this is a place that brings up a lot of things: fear, belonging, transformation. What does this valley mean to you? Like, what does it symbolize to you?
There's so many things. I mean, in a way, it's a sense of things we've lost, and things we could have again. It's also a sense of community, which in today's society is becoming harder and harder to find, and just a place where things are possible. Because it's all in Heimly. They can stay if they want, they can leave. There are conditions with their leaving, but that is their choice. And I guess it comes down to your choices matter in life, and it is what you make of it. Yeah. But also it's just a bit magical and whimsical, and I kind of want to go there.
I'm ready. I'm ready to buy the plane ticket to go there. I really liked in the valley, because the valley to me symbolizes a bit this in-between space. Because at least for a good chunk of the stories, the characters are wrestling with the choice to stay or to go, and the cost that it has for each choice. So I find that when they are in the valley, it's kind of being in an in-between space. Even the valley itself is still hidden, right? And so I find this, if you think about your own life, your experience, and other stories you've written, what do you think about the space of the in-between?
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy for Heimly. And as well, I think that's important. I think that the space of the in-between is a pause. It's a place to reflect where you are, where you've come from, what you're learning, because we're always learning. And essentially, the pause gives you time to think about what is important to you and what it is you really want.
Well, because I was thinking part of my idea around the threshold is that there are many thresholds that happen and we are like thrown into something else, like the Avalanche throws the characters into a different situation completely. But I feel like in our world that's so fast, we're often pushed or at least taught to believe that change needs to be quick. Once you go, there you are. You should be good to go. Like you should move to another country and adapt and cool and be done. But there's a long in between. There's a long transition. And so that's why I'm thinking, and that's why I use the word romancing. How do we romance this in between? How do we relate to this space where we're still wrestling with the old identity? The new one isn't quite ready yet, kind of like the characters wrestle with the decision they got to make. And so that's, not only why I was drawn to the story, but I think these stories, like yourself, you're writing, are very fitting for the times. We need stories like that help us understand that the in-between is fertile. It's powerful. We don't have to rush through it.
I mean, I think that also is obviously something I'm going through myself. And I think a lot of people right now are. As you said, life is so fast at the minute, and we're starting to see through it. And we're starting to want to slow down and just take a breath and enjoy this life, because otherwise it's gone. And so, this space in between and learning about who you are and where you are in this exact moment, I think is very important. And obviously, like I said, a lot of stuff I'm thinking about, a lot of this stuff at the moment in my own life. So obviously that spills over into my books. But as well, especially with monster romance, and there's a lot of fantastic monster romance authors out there. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be done like this, obviously, because a lot of people need just the no high stakes, no stakes at all books for them. That is what they need, and that's great. However, when I'm reading those books, I always feel, even if the book is fantastic, I personally feel something is missing, and I need that little bit of realism. Annoying as I just despair of reality sometimes. But if you don't have any reality in the books, I struggle to really sort of follow the story.
Yeah.
When there's no realism. So I do try and put a little bit of that in. There are some heavy topics in these books, but I don't go into them. I'm not writing a thesis on them. I'm not exploring that particular issue or that characteristic or whatever in so much detail that, it's going to be a critique on the times. That was never my intention. But I do think that, yes, even though it is what some people might say, a fluffy romance with monsters, but I still need that seed but we're grounded here in this world, and these things still happen.
Yeah. As you're saying, it's everything I really believe in, because these stories to me are not fluff, They're definitely not fluff at all. There's a lot of teeth in them. And it's really interesting because, yes, they're the cozy ones, and there's a time for them. It's good to have them. We have a buffet of choices, which is great. But what impressed me about your story, in thinking especially about what you said, you really enjoying epic fantasy, the bigger world building, politics. I think you were able to create a story that made it, in some ways, easy is not quite the right word, but it transported us quite easily into that world. Gave us teeth, because we can see the resonance to certain things that are happening in the world, but it didn't become a thesis. It carried us through the transformation of the character. So I think, it's not fluff. It's actually quite deep. It's just how we approach the reading. And I think a part of us internally is picking that up. It's helping us collectively do a bit of the, I don't know if it's healing, but kind of being able to transform with what is calling us to transform, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
Well, in writing the series, are there any characters that are kind of your favorite or surprised you in any way? Or
Oh, you can't ask for favorites.
it's like they're all your children.
They are. My favorites are always whoever I'm writing, or the latest one that I've written. But who surprised me? I suppose Stian surprised me. I actually didn't expect to see him again after he sort of disappeared in book 1. And yeah, so he surprised me because I wasn't expecting him to come back. I wasn't expecting him to have the sort of self-revelation that he did have with his partners. And yeah, so he was a character that surprised me. And he was tricky as well because obviously I wanted to show his grief, but I didn't want to stretch it out so much that we couldn't get on with the story. But I also wanted it to be a realistic part of the story because it is crucial. It's a huge thing for him and his transformation. And when we're talking about thresholds, he has to step over that threshold of his own grief to come into the world again, to start living again and realize that he is still alive. He didn't die in the avalanche. Yeah. So he was an interesting one. And that story was book 5, Seeking Truth. That book was different in a lot of ways, and that then opened the door to write for me now to go on and write books in not necessarily a different style, but not in the way that the first 4 books were written. I can explore lots more characters now and move on with Heimli's timeline.
Yes, I agree. I wasn't expecting his return. I was quite surprised, but I think it was a great portrayal of the stuckness of grief. And how then meeting other characters that will lead him to cross that threshold and kind of come back to life. I felt that book had a lot more grip, in the sense of, so he crossed that threshold into accepting parts of himself. The other part that I was wondering here, especially from the beginning of the series, each book is told from a different perspective of the original 4 friends. What made you want to write it that way?
Well, that is just how my brain works, apparently. It was just going to be one story. I was just going to write one story and see if I could do a monster romance. But of course, I couldn't just send Kathy to Norway by herself in the middle of winter for no reason. So she needed to have some friends. And then I felt it would have been a disservice to the other 3 girls to just carry on from the end of Kathy's story when clearly, you've got the girls on holiday, or girls, I should say women, they are women. Yeah. You've got the women on holiday, you've got the Dalvakt, so the trolls and the Huldra who are protecting Heimli Valley. And so you've got these 2 groups, and there's not quite an equal number, but it just made sense to my brain to go back to that moment, as much as it was a headache for me at times, especially when we see the same scene from different points of view, but I have to make that scene fresh each time, but keep the important bits. I have to keep the exact wording because it's already been in like 2 other books. So my brain sometimes does good and sometimes just makes a lot of extra work for me.
I mean, I could see that was a creative challenge to describe the event in different ways with different directions, It made me think how in life we see this people even in a family, right? Siblings will experience an event very differently from each other. But in reading the books, we had the pleasure to immediately see how each one is going to see that. Now, the other thing that I think, especially in the first few books, that's so powerful is the choice. Feels like the big crux, right? Do I stay or do I go? And the cost of each. And what do you think why is this type of decision so powerful, especially in romance?
Because, and I know a lot of romance readers won't like me for this answer, but I think loving someone is a choice. You have to make that decision to suddenly not be selfish. You have to make this decision. You are not your own entity anymore. You are part of a couple. You kind of have to give up some of your past, and so does the other person, if you are going to make a relationship work. And that is a choice. And we see this in any sort of romance. We see it with our friends and relatives. And some people just cannot make that choice. We see it with like commitment phobes. They cannot give up what they think is their sense of freedom to love another person. So the choice to stay in Heimlich was very much about a choice to love someone. And that also, but it's not always, choosing to love someone is not always about giving up. Yeah, you might have to, okay, I give up my house in this country to live with this person in this country. Yeah, that's giving something up. But you're also opening up yourself to gain so much love, so much compassion, so much support, new experiences with this person that you have chosen. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to say, yeah, I want to be with that person, or I don't want to be with that person. And I guess the choice to stay in Heimlich just reflects that love is a choice. As much as we all love the soulmates and the mate bond and all that, at the end of the day, it is down to us and what we decide.
Yeah, that's true, because with the fated mates and the mate bond, I mean, it just ups the stakes higher on the choice that we as mere mortals over here, humans, have to make every day, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm also seeing this, the other big theme that I could see from the books is the idea of the found family, the sense of the search of belonging. And so what does that mean to you? This, for you, maybe from your own personal experiences in life?
Yeah, I think that does come from my experience. I mean, found family is a favorite trope for a lot of people in many genres. Because, I mean, there's that expression, isn't there? You can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends. But so it's sort of, for some people, they have amazing families, and that is great. That is fantastic. And I'm very happy for them. But a lot of people don't. They maybe don't have the support from their family, even though they are loved. There's just something that's not quite what they need. Maybe they're not understood, their job, their hobbies, the many, many things. Or maybe, unfortunately, people don't have family. So I think building this sense of family in a community is very important. I moved around a lot growing up. And so I am drawn to this found family trope because I think it's fantastic. And I guess, I want to go on a quest with and find my found family and all that. I think it's so ingrained in all of us, just this sense of belonging with people who accept us exactly as we are, for who we are, with no judgment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking here as you were talking about that, and definitely I agree. It's a wonderful I wouldn't even sort of really call it a trope as I'm thinking about it. I would call it really an archetypal experience, because I think especially those in the world today where people are moving around and there's, you want to find your so-called, your tribe. But one thing that as you were talking made me think about that I hadn't thought about before is the experience of being seen through the story of your books. First the trolls are sort of in hiding, they're watching from a distance, and then they are seen, something is revealed. And even within the idea of found family and belonging, I almost feel like you can't really do that until you cross the threshold, just to use the word, of being seen as you are, not hiding, as you are. And
that comes with accepting that yourself and seeing that yourself. And I think, again, in today's society, that is something that a lot of people are really sort of craving. They want to see themselves. They want to, maybe they knew who that was when they were a child, and it's been covered up with work and the way society expects people to be, but they see how they want to be or see how they were when they were carefree. And it is accepting that image of yourself that is what really helps push you over that threshold, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy step.
No. It's a challenge that I think we all go through, not just once, many times in life, because there's always a stripping of another level, another layer, So I'm wondering here now, as we're kind of coming to a close, is, the same way that when we read your books, we cross the Avalanche, we cross into Heimly, into this other world. What do you hope your readers would carry once they cross into this valley? What do you hope them to bring back?
Well, I guess mostly just that they had a good time, that they enjoyed the story. That's all any writer wants, really. But I don't know, just that if something resonated with them, if they found something from the story, a particular character, and that helped them in some way, then I would find that amazing. But ultimately, if you just want to read a nice book about romance and trolls, then I am also very happy.
It's okay. I was going to joke and say, if you're working with the tourist board of Norway, maybe you can get people to come visit. But the place doesn't exist in this world, our world, but it does exist in the imaginal world. So before we start wrapping up and before we go into our rapid questions, what's kind of next for you here? Are we going to spend more time in Heimly? Or are you dreaming up something new?
Well, there will be a book coming out very soon, our Christmas book. And that is not a troll. That is not a troll. But there are some hard-hitting things in that book. I will just warn you now. Although I do love Nina and Nils, the characters in that book. Again, it was a whole new experience writing that book. And it also opened up some more doors to some new characters, sidelines that I might want to go down. But I do have more books planned. I have sort of slowed down a bit. I feel like I've worked so much this year. 2 books technically came out last year, but I feel like the whole series has just come out this year. And there's also the short story, which is part of an anthology at the moment, the Monstrous Cravings anthology. When that's, I think after 3 months, I can then publish that outside of that. So that's also another thing I have written, which I keep forgetting about. But I do have more plans for Heimly and the surrounding area. So Trövik, the city, which is not too far away. that's going to play more of a role in the books. But yes, Sanna's story is all planned and ready to go.
Oh, yes.
The healer from Heimly, especially book 2. You might remember her. And there is a plan for Fenrir, who was a very, very minor character in book 4, I want to say. And then, we do. I know everybody wants Njord's story, the knuckling.
Yes.
It is coming. It's just not there yet. We're just letting him have a little bit of fun, chill out a bit. There is a potential harpy story coming.
Ooh.
Yes, you've heard it here first. So there are lots that every time I write a book in Heimly, I get so many more ideas. And because every time I'm like, okay, this is the last one. This is the last one. We'll wrap it up. I can't. They're just, because it is a living, breathing community now. It's got a life of its own.
It does. It does. I'm wondering here, how do you, I guess, I don't know, juggle, or how do these stories come to you? Does the character come to you and says, Ella, it's my time now, I need my book? Or is it more subtle? Or do they start speaking in your head? How does that happen for you creatively?
It's sort of as I'm writing, I get a pull towards certain characters, but also I have to look at the wider storyline. And sometimes that does include a bit more boring sort of sitting down and actually planning out the next couple of books and seeing where that's going to take me, which is something I do need to sit down and do. Because, as I said, I feel like I've published a lot very quickly this year, and so now I'm just taking a breather. But there are definitely more things coming. I just need this last bit of the year just to take a breath.
Yes,
and then we will get back into it. But yeah, it's a mixture of feeling the pull, what makes sense in the world, especially now where we are after book 6. Again, without trying to give too many spoilers, but there is a lot of building going on, and so within the world, and that has to take a part in whoever's story gets told next.
And in writing this whole series, and as we can hear, more will be coming, what creative threshold do you feel you're crossing, or being challenged to cross?
Organization, maybe, which is not a strong point of mine. No, just I don't know. I am ready to find out what that is, to be honest. I'm just really enjoying what Heimly has given to me so far and what I hope it's giving to readers. And I am very excited to see where it takes me next.
I think it's a great image, what you're saying, that sometimes we can linger in that world. Yeah. You don't have to rush it. You're just playing with it, see what rises. And I think that gets translated into the feel of the books, because it's been nice to see your, since I read the first one, seeing how you're growing. It's like there's more rootedness in each book that you're writing. Like the world that you're creating is really getting really fleshed out. So I really feel it's a great example of being able to not just skip from one point to the other, but you are really lingering and letting the space of creativity transform you, and we get to benefit from that.
Well, thank you.
Good. So we're going to be on the lookout for Christmas book coming. Yay. But are you ready for
which is called Gifting Hope?
Ooh, Gifting Hope. A perfect title for the times. When is it? Do you have a date when it comes out, or?
I haven't set a date yet because I am just waiting on the final edits back, and then I can format it and the cover. And as soon as I should be getting them any day now, so then I can set a date. But it will either be very late November or very early December. So do
Okay.
keep an eye out.
The way time is flying, that's practically around the corner. So,
Yeah.
good. I'm looking forward to it. A little Christmas read. Okay, so are you ready for a little rapid fire questions?
Yes, I'm a bit nervous
for us to sort of close this exchange. So these, I'm going to ask you, just go with your gut, but give it a go. So first one, are you, just think of you, your personally, your own experience. Are you more of a jump in head first, or do you like to take things step by step?
Oh, I'm somewhere in the middle. I want to jump in straight head first, but then I get pulled back by all my doubts and insecurities and have to think about it a bit more. Because when I do jump in, things usually go wrong.
So there's a little caution here. A little.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are you more drawn to adventure or to the comfort of the known?
The comfort of the known. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Be that good or bad. Yeah.
Well, I guess it goes with the first answer, right? There's a little.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to test the waters here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that made me think, are there any other characters from the series that you feel kind of reflected a little bit more who you are in facing change?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like they've all got parts of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. They all dealt with change very differently. So I can see some cautious, some jumping in.
Maybe more Kathy, the original. Maybe.
The original. Yeah, She had a bit more of this. She had an even keel vibe to her that I remember. She could jump in, but she was also, I can see that. That makes sense, I would say. So when you think of romance, what feels most romantic to you? What's an expression of romantic to you?
Support. Definitely. And that can be emotional. In fact, it usually is emotional support, or just not needing to explain. The look on my face says it all and things are done. That is one of the most, I know it doesn't sound romantic, but it is one of the most romantic things, where somebody just knows. They know you, they know what you need, and they've got you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with that. I think it's the whole "I've got you" is so potent. If you were to cross a magical threshold, what would you rather cross into, a secret valley or a secret library?
That's not a fair question. Well, I have to say Secret Valley because I wrote.
You got to be on brand.
Yeah. But there is a library there, though. So technically, that's a secret library as well.
Yes, good point. There is a library there. I do think it's a tough one. Book lovers,
Yeah.
Tough choice. And like I was saying earlier, the name of this podcast, Romancing the Threshold. So when you hear that phrase, romancing the threshold, what comes up for you?
It makes me think of taking risks, but about exciting things, nothing dangerous. It makes me think of expanding your experiences and your horizons. And but again, not in a dangerous way. And maybe it just means thinking about it and dreaming, definitely dreaming of what could be, what you want. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, Ella, thank you so much for stepping through this threshold with me.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And like I said, I really loved your series. I'm looking forward to the next ones. But I really like the image of the avalanche that serves as the threshold into love, belonging, transformation, acceptance, and all things that we're really hungry for these days. And of course, for all the listeners out there, you gotta get the books. I'll put the link in the show notes for the series. And thank you, Ella. You know what stays with me from this conversation? That image of Ella getting off the plane in Norway for the first time, seeing the beauty and magic of nature all around her in what her husband described as just the motorway. Sometimes we need fresh eyes, whether it's a visitor to a new land or characters thrust into a hidden valley, to remember the magic of transformation that is always available, hiding in plain sight. But here's what really strikes me. Ella talked about love as a choice, about how choosing someone means you're not your own entity anymore, and how that's not just loss, but an opening to gain so much. That's the medicine hidden in those troll romances. They're teaching us that the real threshold isn't the avalanche. It's what we choose to do in the aftermath. Do we grip tight to our old shape, or do we get curious about what new form is emerging? This is what I mean by romancing the threshold. It's choosing to linger in that hidden valley of becoming, to approach our own avalanche moments with the curiosity of lovers, discovering each other rather than strangers defending territory. Ella's given us stories where being seen is both the price and the gift of belonging, where the pause isn't empty, but pregnant with possibility. If you haven't read Falling for the Hidden Folks series yet, start with adjusting focus and let yourself linger in that liminal space where trolls can be hot and avalanches can be doorways. And keep an eye out for Gifting Hope, her Christmas book coming late November or early December. Until next time, this is me reminding you to go gently, go boldly into the in-between with curiosity for what awaits at the threshold.